last month at a meeting of the European Parliament, a representative from the Netherlands, part of the Netherlands Parliament, Rob Roos, asked a question to one of the executives of Pfizer. He asked, was the Pfizer virus treatment tested on stopping the transmission of the virus before it entered the market? If not, please say it clearly. If yes, are you willing to share the data with this committee? Now, it wasn't the CEO of Pfizer who was in attendance. It was one of their executives, though, Janine Small. And she answered, regarding the question around, did we know about stopping immunization before it entered the market? No. She says we had to really move at the speed of science to really understand what is taking place in the market. And from that point of view, we had to do everything at risk. So when taking into consideration all of the parties who were affected by, this pandemic that we went through, the public sector, the government, the bodies that regulate these kinds of treatments, the private sector, primarily the people researching and making the treatments, and of course the public, that's just the people. We got to look at where their responsibility lies. So normally, especially in American society, we would say, oh, that responsibility lies with the individual. Not saying that everyone out there is an expert or a scientist, but each of us has the opportunity here to do research, consult who we will consult, and make a decision. But how much of that was actually left up to us when the people making these treatments had, a lot of faith in their data, not a lot of liability through the PrEP Act and many other acts that have been in place in American law since the 80s. And then, of course, you have the FDA and other governing bodies who completely back their immunity, their non-liable status for any adverse effects that come from taking their treatments. And then, of course, the individual. Like, where does the responsibility lie? Well, obviously not with the private companies making these treatments. They've already been absolved by the government, and not the government itself, because that's not how they work, taking responsibility. So we got to look at, you have unfounded research and then a government that mandates, and not at every state level, but at the federal level. If you had a federal job, you were expected to take this treatment. And then, of course, in the private sector, different employers had different policies. But once again, responsibility or liability, when there is a mandate, and look up the definition of mandate, when you are being told to make this decision or move on, make this decision or this opportunity, this door is closed, make this decision, and you don't feel like you have a choice, well, once again, we got to look at who is going to be able to answer to you if things don't go as planned. Now, there was a tweet from April of from April 1st, 2021. This is from Albert Boria, who is the head honcho, the CEO of Pfizer. Excited to share that updated analysis from our phase 3 study with BioNTech also showed that our treatment, pandemic sickness treatment, was 100% effective in preventing cases in South Africa. So how could that be true when a year and a half later, one of his top brass is saying, well, we didn't have as much information as we thought? On top of all of this, you have the messaging that taking this treatment you won't spread it. You take this treatment, you will not spread it. Whether you are showing symptoms or not showing symptoms, you take this treatment, you won't spread it. Based on what science? Science that they say they have, but are unable to produce when asked this year in 2022 to give a solid answer and produce the data. And then the media narratives. I was living in New York City at the time. I heard the president and other officials locally to where I was talk about the pandemic of the unvaccinated. the pandemic of the unvaccinated. So do people like do people who didn't want to take the treatment, do they stand vindicated right now? Is this a huge news story? Are people being recognized for their skepticism, and rightfully so? No, because that goes against the control that benefits the public government sector, and that goes against the profits, that the private sector stands to gain. So once again, you can only answer to and for yourself.